Welcome, cycling fans. I hope you've been enjoying all the amazing guests that I've been bringing you on the podcast to date. And before we get started, I want to share with you an amazing way that you can coach with me this winter. So if you've been liking all my coaching segments, you're going to love this program. So it's my 16-week online winter road cycling training program. Say that 10 times fast. So I've been doing this program for over 15 years. It's been usually local, but now it's online, which is even more amazing because I can impact more cyclists this way than in studio. The way it works is you're going to learn valuable cycling skills, such as, have you ever asked yourself, first of all, how can I become a create a more smooth pedal stroke? Like, what are the 4 quadrants all these people have been talking about? And how can I get stronger on the hills? So here's the thing. It really comes down to the fundamentals and the basics skills of cycling, which when you get on your bike, you know nothing about. Now this is that, and that's what I'm going to drill into you over 16 weeks. So when you finish, you are going to know how to create a smooth pedal stroke and be more efficient. You're going to be climbing hills with much better technique. You're going to be building your sprint base, and your endurance base is going to be much stronger. Now, I have a special code for you. It's podcast in all uppercase to get $50 off either the VIP or the basic program. Now, go to this website to check out what the differences are. Basically, the VIP is a much greater coaching program. So if you want more personalized coaching, goal setting, and we have a reported 5 to 20% increase in fitness. Can you imagine starting your spring with that kind of increase based on last year? So it's 16wkroadcycling.ca. So that's 16wkroadcycling.ca and use the code podcast to get $50 off. And if you have questions, just email me. I'd love to answer them. And I hope and look forward to coaching you to become better on the bike. I hope you enjoy the next episode. Have an amazing day. All right. Welcome everyone to another episode of Secrets from the Saddle, All Things Cycling podcast with your host, Sylvie. And I am like out of my mind excited to bring my friend Monilee Keller to the podcast, because not only do we go way back to Ottawa when she's just reminding me, because like I'm getting old and I can't remember things, but she was a mountain bike racer, and I hired her to be a spin instructor in my spinning studio called CycleFit. Now, CycleFit was around from 2001 to 2009. And we also both adventure raced at that time. So short course, long course. I don't know how long you did yours, Monilee, but anyways, we go back 20 years. And I've been bugging her to come on this podcast because I'm just like, I have to talk, and the reason why, and not only because we know each other and we have cycling together, but she is also a serious online ZWIFT race chick. Like and I was just like blown away because I just got into ZWIFT this year. And I love racing, and I'm just like, anyway, so Monilee, she's a mom of 3 girls. She's a mountain bike racer. She's a new road racer of this year, which I can't believe. And she works for Microsoft, and she's in Washington. She's so far away from me now, but like, Monilee, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Sylvie. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to pick your brains so bad because, so like I was saying, we know each other from like 20 years ago. Okay. 15, maybe longer. And I just, so you could just give a little background on how you got started mountain biking and with the studio, just to give a little bit of history. Cause like,
I don't remember.
Like I said, I'm getting old, and
Yeah.
Just like,
Yeah, I met you in Ottawa, and when I moved to Ottawa was when I first learned to ride a bike. And so I was really learning to ride a bike. And the reason, Sylvie, I had to learn to ride a bike is because I wanted to do adventure racing. Yeah, so at the time I was a rock climber, I was into kayaking, I was a big hiker, like massive hiker. But I did not ride bikes because I grew up riding horses. So that's when I had to learn, and that's why I learned to ride a bike. And so the time that I met you, I was just learning to ride, and I got into spinning because I was like, well, I can get into shape while I'm learning the technique of riding a bike. And so then I became a spin instructor, and I was like, hey, can I work for you? And you said, sure. And you had no idea what you were getting into. But yeah, so at the time I was working at Nortel full time. I had graduated, but this was like a side gig for me, and really it was just to help me get my fitness, my bike fitness, to be a bit better. And so I got into spinning and being a spin instructor.
oh my gosh, like, I had amazing spin instructors, and no doubt you're one of them, because like our studio back in the day before it became like, like disco balls and aerobics on bikes, we were a true cycling spin
Yeah.
studio. Like you came to my studio to learn how to ride your bike, like ride and cycling skills and technique. And yeah, like it doesn't, well, anyways, I
There's still
apologize for my
that I use today that I learned in spin. Seriously.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
And I still teach those as a coach. And it's funny because Mad Dog Athletics, even though like, Johnny G, they were all cyclists, and they all taught, like, it is funny, like pedal stroke and breathing and hill climbing and, like transitioning and cadence and everything like came from there. Right? Like, it's funny, and it's funny how it's morphed. It's not funny how it's morphed, but anyways, so when did you leave and go to Seattle? Because I was like,
goodness, it was 2008.
okay, so right before I left, I closed the studio.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so I got into, so adventure racing led me to mountain biking. I had to learn to mountain bike a little bit to adventure race. And I was like, this is freaking amazing. I want to do this thing called mountain biking. And then I got totally hooked. And so then, as you know, I got really into mountain biking and raced for quite a bit. And I was doing the shorter races, the Canada Cups and stuff like that when I was living in Ottawa. But then when we moved to Seattle, I decided I wanted to do the 24-hour solos. So I transitioned into doing really long endurance events, and I did 24-hour solos for several years. Went to Australia, so I did worlds in Australia, worlds in California, and worlds in Canada. 3 or 4 years
like
in a row.
24-hour worlds?
Yeah, they do that.
Seriously?
There's a
wow.
There's enough crazy people that they have this thing and they call it worlds.
Okay, so I just did an 8-hour, like, and of course I've got the adventure racing background. Now tell me about a 24-hour solo.
Yeah.
Okay, just right up your strategy.
It'd be right up your alley, right? Because it
yeah, really I think so.
Right? It's just about like pacing, and for me, my strategy was ignore everyone, which sounds like, but it's serious. It's kind of, you have to do your own thing. So a lot of people would go super hot, and if you were to look at the results through the race and you were to kind of watch the numbers, you could see like at about midnight, or like the first 6 hours of the race, I'm probably in the last 25%, like of the solo females in the list. And then you come to midnight and I'm probably maybe now at the 50th percentile. And then I always say the race starts at 6 a.m. You get to 6 a.m. and I'm then maybe eking towards the top 25. And like a lot of times it would be 6 a.m. and they'd be like, okay, you're in 10th place or you're in 15th place, like now is the time. And I'm like, this is race time, right, for me. And you feel like you're racing, but the reality is my lap times would be so consistent through the entire thing that even when I felt like I was racing at 6 a.m., I was just going the same pace that I was going the day before. But I just never dropped my pace. But everyone else would drop their pace, their pace would drop by like 20 to 30 minutes a lap. And I was just super consistent. So then at the last 6 hours, I'm just reeling people in like crazy. And then you can finish in the top 5, right? Or the top 10. Depending on the competition and how deep it is. But like, that was always my strategy, was like, do my own thing and ignore everybody else. Because otherwise my weakest link was my stomach. And if my stomach blew up because I went out too hard, then I was totally screwed. And I knew that I wouldn't have a good finish in the race, right? Like, then you have to wait for your stomach to collect itself, and you're going really slow in order for your stomach to recover. And sometimes your stomach doesn't recover.
That would be a long race if you're like constantly like,
yeah,
I know. And not only pacing, but your nutrition has to be seriously on par. Because I found when I did that 8 hour, like when I saw, I was like 8 hours. I'm like, and the laps, and I'm like, I can do this. Like, wow. And but the thing is that so it was 8 hours. So I went out harder. Like I did 2 laps back to back, and I'm like, okay, I'll see where I'm sitting. And then I stopped and I had some like whole food. And then I went out and I was just like a little, like 5-10 minutes slower and slower. And so I was like, I was going to go 4 laps, but I ended up getting 5th. And if I had been a little bit more trained, I could have gotten a 6th. But yeah, that was fun. I'm like, I felt totally, and like just to be in your element of like fast downhills and just like gravel and and I was like, woo! You know, and you're by yourself and you're just screaming to you're like,
that's the
best. But okay, so let me just ask, did you sleep at all?
No.
You didn't.
No. Not if you want to win.
Not if you want to win. I love it. Yeah, that's right. So all right. So well, I know you can. Like, but sometimes getting off the bike is way worse than, and you're just like, I don't want to stop. And that's kind of how I felt when I stopped to actually eat. I had to like crawl off my bike. I don't know if it's because I'm 50 years old now, but getting back on, I felt way better. So where did you go after your worlds? Like, because that's totally fascinating.
Yeah, well then I had kids.
Say no more.
So that changes things a little.
Did you continue kind of racing during the kid phase?
Well, when I was pregnant, mostly I transitioned to running because my belly, like I'm so small, as you know, I'm 5'4", right? And I'm pretty small. So like I didn't have room after about, especially in the last couple of months, there was no room for me and the belly and the bike to coexist. And so I would do some biking and do quite a bit of running. I did some races in between kids, but it was like definitely just the shorter races, really just the local stuff. And it wasn't like, I don't know, you can call it racing or you can call it going out to ride with a bunch of cool people that are really fast, like especially when you're just not that competitive, you know, and you're just going out for fun. And I definitely was doing that. And I remember doing one race that was 40 miles and it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Ended up having to stop and nurse Maya, my now 7-year-old, in the middle of the race because it just took way longer than anticipated, and I had to nurse. Like I couldn't keep going.
So like, okay, get her ready for the next time. I'm gonna pull in and
because it just took a lot longer than I anticipated. So it's, that's more of a ride. But yeah, But yeah, I definitely kept involved with the local races. And even now I'm still doing mostly local races. Cause again, like as a mom with young kids and then working full time, it's super hard to travel around and do what I used to be able to do. But it's still a ton of fun, and there's a really great communities here in Seattle and really good racing opportunities just pretty locally within the state of Washington. It's actually really, really amazing. So I'm really lucky with where we live now.
Are the girls getting into cycling like mom?
Yeah, they are. They all have their bikes, and it's so cute when we would do when I got into road racing this summer, it was at like a specific raceways, it's called. It's at like a car racing track. And so there's these little areas on the side where the girls could play, and they'd bring their bikes. They always wanted to take their bikes. They would ride the entire time I was racing. So my races would be like 45 minutes to an hour, and they'd ride the whole time, and they'd just be so exhausted on the way home. And we would stop and get them a treat, but it was super cute. I could see them sometimes riding on the side when I'm racing. It was super cool. Yeah, super cool.
Oh, I love that. I love when I'm trying to get my kids into cycling. My son is more into his mountain bike, which is cool.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Mommy, we should mountain bike." And one day I was like, "Hey, I'm ready to mountain bike." He's like, "No, I don't want to go with you." I'm like, "Aw." And my daughter is kind of like, I'm not too sure. I'm like, okay. So, you just don't press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity, and because I just want them to love whatever they do, whatever they decide that they want to do for their hobby. I don't care if it's knitting or if it's biking or if it's swimming or whatever. I do want them to have something that they love, and that's the main thing. Yeah.
Transitioning, when did you find ZWIFT?
Yes.
Let's talk about this, because
Yeah.
honestly, Monilee, you're like a huge role model to me. I just like, I'm like, wow, that's super cool. I mean, especially to know someone who's at your level. And I don't even know about this, like levels and racing, the competition side, like online, is absolutely crazy to me. But I want to learn all about it from you. So when did you find ZWIFT?
I think it was 2019. So I had a CompuTrainer. Do you remember the CompuTrainers?
I have one too.
For years.
Yeah.
You can actually hook up the CompuTrainer to ZWIFT, but it's not the best. Anyways, and I would just train in the garage by myself on the CompuTrainer for hours in the winter, and it was really boring and hard. And I started after Zoe. Zoe's now she'll be 5 in December. I started getting back into biking, and I was like, yeah, I really want to get back into biking. It was just like super boring to be in the CompuTrainer by myself all winter, but I hate riding outside and especially on the road, doing road riding in the rain. And so my husband bought me the Wahoo kicker for my birthday, and he was like, well, this is the coolest new trainer. And and I was like, oh, that's cool. And oh, I guess you have to use this program called ZWIFT with the kicker. Like that's the program, the training program that goes with it. And so I started looking into it, and I was like, it's just a whole new world. It's like you riding with people. There's rides that are organized all the time that you can join, or you can just free ride and do your own thing too. And you can choose from a bunch of different worlds, and it's just so more advanced than the CompuTrainer software. And it was just like, wow, like this is amazing. And so I started just riding, and then I found this group of people. It's called BMTR, and they were just the most amazing group, like super welcoming group. And they were my first home in ZWIFT in terms of like groups to ride with, because they do these early morning rides that start at 5:10 my time, right? And 100 miles, and they do these epic, like, and it was like perfect for me. I was like, this was made for me. And they were really, really nice. And they taught me a lot about ZWIFT, and I learned a ton. And they would do these rides on Saturday that would be like a century that was paced rides. So everyone would ride the same pace, and you could pretty much be guaranteed, and it wasn't a race. And then on Sunday, everyone would race a longer race, and we raced. And so I would learn like a little bit about racing, and that was my first entrance. And they were called fundos. and we still do them. I'm still part of the BMTR community, and we do these fundos on Sunday, and you can race the fundo. So we'd race against each other. We'd all ride 100 miles on Saturday, and then we'd race some crazy like 60-mile thing or something on Sunday. And it was just awesome. And that was my first introduction to racing and on ZWIFT. And it wasn't like one of the official races. It was just like this thing, but it was just like really fun. And then I found out there was like actual races, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I want to try the races. And I found this thing on Facebook about this girls team, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to just join a girls community. And I didn't know I was applying for a race team, but I filled out the application. And then I found out it was a race team, and I was like, well, that's cool. Like, teach me. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I got in with a really great group of girls who taught me a ton about racing, because I really didn't know anything about racing on ZWIFT. And there's a lot to strategy, and there's the techniques, and a lot of things to learn about racing in ZWIFT. And that's when I got into doing actual races and being on like a race team. And then it just went from there.
We'll talk about this race team, because this isn't just a race team. Like, if you follow Monilee on ZWIFT, I don't even know if it's on ZWIFT. Anyway, she showed me that, if you watch her on Instagram, she posts these where they're actually televised. I think you were doing YouTube lives, right? You said you had.
Yeah, I stream my YouTube, and they also do a thing of the whole race. Like they have announcers, and they talk about riders.
Yeah. So this is like a official in a virtual world, like racing, where you could pretend like you're out on a crit course of some sort somewhere. So I was just like, what? Yeah. Anyway, so talk about that, because I was like, this is getting even better. Because
there's racing, and then there's racing, right?
Yeah.
So in ZWIFT racing, just in ZWIFT, you have different categories of rides and races, and it goes from A to D, and then E is women only usually, but A is like 4+ watts per kilogram, and then it goes down. And I don't remember the exact jumps from A all the way through D, but you self-select, and then it will tell you if you're being a sandbagger. But you self-select into the right category, and then you race against people who are kind of at your same level. So it's pushing you to get better.
What I love.
At your level, right? Which is kind of the same as if you were thinking about Cat 4, Cat 3, right? When you're outside doing road racing, or if you're in mountain biking, you're doing like open, whatever. You're choosing the right category, and they put you in the right category based off of your performance and results. It's the same in ZWIFT. And so with ZWIFT now, they also started something called a Premier League, and that is a selective league. And it's like the top racers from all around the world. And then they have a set of teams, and there's 10 to 12 teams that will compete each season. Men against men, and women against women. They do it for men and women. And so they all have 10 women's teams, 10 men's team. And you have to earn your spot. Traditionally, the team has to earn their spot in the Premier League. And it's basically the best. They want the best racing, the best, right? And it's all around the world, people from all around the world, teams from all around the world. And so the cool thing is you're getting to race. I mean, the cool thing about ZWIFT, no matter what category you race in, is you are getting to race people from all around the world. So you're getting to push yourself in ways that maybe you wouldn't be able to get to do in your own backyard, right? So with Premier, they do this, and this is the one where they do, they have announcers, and they televise it, and it's broadcast. And then a lot of the racers who race like me will do a YouTube stream of their own self racing. And part of it is like to help the race organizers see the setup, and part of it's like validation, and part of it is just for the team and to have it out there, and so that you can learn from your mistakes. So I like to go back and look at some of my things and see, oh yeah, that's where I did that thing, and I should probably not do that again. And you can learn from other people, which is really useful too, like watching if they've done it. I always if I have time, I like to see somebody else race the course that we're going to race so I can learn. And so you can go to YouTube and search for like that and find somebody who's raced it before, and you really get to pick up a couple of tips and tricks on the race course. Like, oh, that's the corner where you start the sprint. Just even being prepared for the finish is super helpful. But anyway, so yeah, they have this Premier League. It is kind of like you have to have a certain type of trainer. Only certain type of trainers are accepted. You have to dual record.
What's
so
that trainer?
So what's that?
What's the trainer?
What's a trainer?
What type of trainer?
Oh, what types? Oh, I don't remember. I'd have to dig
Okay.
out. But I know, like, I have the kicker and like this. There's the stages.
Okay, so Wahoo.
Wahoo is one of them. I think there's Neos. Tax has some that are in there. Saris has some that are in there for sure. I don't know the whole list, but they have a list of them. And then you have to have something else to double check your power. And so I have pedals. It's either pedals or cranks. And so you dual record. So one, your trainer is connected to the game, and then your pedals would be connected to your Garmin, and you'd be recording on your Garmin the power the same time the game is recording the power. And you have to upload it so they check the data against itself to make sure that everything is legit. You have to have a heart rate monitor that is reading correctly during the race. They use that as validation. There was one race where my heart rate monitor disconnected because Bluetooth is amazing, and I had to physically stop and like reconnect it and repair it in order to keep racing, or else I would have been disqualified. So they're very like, but it's just, this is all about fairness, right?
It's like having a mechanical.
It is. It really is. That's how they think about it. And it's actually kind of, if you think about it in that way, you're like, okay, well, that's fair. And it sucks when it happens. Like, it sucks when you're the one that gets a mechanical, but it happens. Flat tires are crappy, but that's part of racing.
It happens.
Yeah. And then the other thing, you have to do like a video weigh-in that you upload to make sure, because a lot of ZWIFT is based off of watts per kilogram. And so your weight really does matter. So you have to prove, have a video showing that you weigh what you say that you weigh in the game, just again, to make sure everyone's being fair, because, you're not showing up physically somewhere and racing against each other. It's all online, electronic. So they do as many things as they can to make sure that everybody's being fair, and that it's a fair competition, which I think is really good. It is tough. Like, it's a lot of data and a lot to do, like, especially because the races are in the middle of the workday. So I'm always running around like a crazy person for a little while around the race to make sure I've got everything, sorted out. But I think it makes sense that they do it at the level that they're racing, and the top teams can make money. So there's prize money involved, and I think it's fair.
So, how would one navigate getting to that level is what I'd like to.
Yeah.
So you ended up just by happenstance, like, to apply, like, find this Facebook page, apply, and then you're like, whoa, I'm in this whole new world.
I wasn't immediately in the Premier League. So I was on this team, and that's how it generally starts. There's a lot of teams, like the team I'm on now they would have women racing at all levels. They have D racers, C racers, B racers, A racers, and then the Premier League racers, which can be separate from A, because the Premier League is kind of like the top A's, and not all A's want to do the Premier League, because, like I said, there's a lot of kind of some stress around the races, right? So more stress than just showing up and clipping in your pedals going. And so, like, you would join at that team like that, figure out where you are now, like, are you a B, are you an A, are you a top A, and then get to the point of like, okay, well, if you're one of the top A's, then you can always, or you can ask, or you will be asked to if you want to do the Premier League team, to join it and do the Premier League. You also have to do like a verification test where you basically have a video recording device. I use my iPad set up that records you from behind you, your trainer, your bike, and the bike screen. And then I use like OBS to show also the ZWIFT in-app game. And you go through a series of tests. So then they want to see you calibrating your bike, your trainer, and then you do like a 1 minute, I think it starts, it's like a 1 minute power and then a 2 minute power, I don't know, a 7 minute power and a 20 minute power, and then a 15-second power or something like that in this test. And so you show them this and they're watching you do it on screen as data and validation that they use. So like, for example, if I showed up to a race and I did 50% more than my 20-minute test in the 20-minute window, they'd be like, Monilee, what's going on? Right? Because they use it as a source for data validation. And then also we have to submit outdoor files. So I have a bunch of outdoor data that I have to send in, that I had to send in to them so that they have the data. So if they ever question a performance from me, they have all this data that they then go look at and say, okay, is this, like, was this performance in line with her past performances? Yes or no? And so they use all that data. So to get, like, it is a bit of work once you decide that you want to do this, that you have to do. And it, again, it's all about fairness and all of that good stuff. It's kind of, think about it in the same way as like, well, you get seated at a UCI race based off of how your previous performance is, and they use that data to determine where you should start. It's kind of like, it's kind of similar. Like they use the data to determine, like, because people can cheat. You could potentially cheat, I think, in different ways. And, even just if you had your weight in as incorrectly, that would be a potential.
So is a lot of that stuff sort of like preliminary, like you have to do that in order to get on there, like this is like a one-time thing, or do you do it every season, like that whole testing part?
The testing part is, I think the tests are good for like 6 months to a year. The outdoor data is good for a year. So like I kind of have this spreadsheet that I use, so I know, I need to go out soon. I'll tell my coach I need to go get another 1 minute number soon, and then I'll go get it, because I'll see that my data is starting to get stale.
Well, and plus if you go out and race for the summer, you're definitely going to come back a little bit fitter for the winter. So you're
but you don't necessarily hit your PRs when you're racing, because it's different.
It's different. Whoa,
so it's so cool. Bit of work to do, and it's all, again, in the name of fairness. And so I don't mind doing it, although I don't like the test. No one likes a test, but that's the whole point of a test. It's a test. It's miserable.
I remember doing one of those FTP tests, and I only did it once, but my Bluetooth or my connection stopped like halfway through. I was like, fuck this. But you know what I mean? But that's just like you said, it's like the connection, I don't know, it wouldn't start again. It dropped or whatever. I'm like, this is not fair or fun, because like,
wait till
I don't care about a ride, but like when you're starting to zone in on a test, like
I showed up at a premier race one time, and my trainer, I actually had to get my trainer replaced after this. Like, I have no idea what happened. It's like the whole thing imploded, and I was spinning and it was doing nothing. And I was like, I told the girls, like, I can't, like, my avatar is not even moving. Like, I can't even.
Then that happens too. You're like,
I'm
hello,
done.
What's going on?
So actually, and that was my entire trainer blew up, and I had to get a new one. But that was the worst timing possible. It was like off the start line of a race.
So when you have a race, I think you said you did them like what, Tuesdays?
They are they're going to be back to be Mondays, but they were on Tuesdays.
Mondays.
I know.
Okay, because like I was going to ask you now, because I'm looking at like putting together my training schedule. Because last year I asked you about it, and it was way too far into the season that I could even think about backtracking to doing some racing or getting into it. But now that the season's starting. This
Community
is whenever
are Tuesdays, and so they do the Premier League is like there's a premier, and then there's community races, and the community races are on Tuesdays, and the premier one is on Monday.
Okay, so I would start with the community ones.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And I remember you telling me how to get started, like doing the power, ZWIFT Power.
Yeah, ZWIFT Power, it's called, the app. Yeah, it's
so I have to do all that. I've got to get a proper trainer because I only have power pedals. I don't have.
You can for the community races. I think that's okay to not have both. But for the premier, you definitely need to have both.
Well, I think if I'm going to be serious, I should get something that actually gives me the hills. Even though,
I really like the kicker climb, because you put your front fork on it and it goes up and down with the terrain. And I love the variation because it uses different muscles. I actually think it's really great.
Oh, good point.
And then when I went outside the first time I had the kicker and I was using the kicker climb, then I went outside to mountain bike race in the winter, and I was like, I can climb hills. And normally when I'm going from riding inside, to racing outside, I struggle on the hills a little bit at the beginning to just get my climbing legs back, I say. But it's all just because you're using those different muscles, and I already had them because I was on an incline climbing inside.
Oh, that's wicked. I mean, I felt a huge difference actually putting effort into serious training last winter when I went out, and I did my first 100K in like May, and that wouldn't have happened until like July.
Yeah.
And I felt okay after, you know what I mean? I was just wow.
Makes a big difference.
This stuff does work.
Yeah.
I mean, being the coach, right? I'm like,
yeah. And seriously, like the 100 milers I do, it's like you're riding for 4 hours almost. It's like 3 hours and 45 minutes without stopping, without breaks, without stopping. No, there's no coasting, there's no stoplights, there's nothing to give you, and you don't get that kind of training outside. So when you go from that to doing an outdoor ride, your outdoor rides feel freaking easy because you get the stoplights, you get the coast down the hills. Like it is all a very it's like, this is easy riding outside.
I know. When I was talking to Monilee, she's like, yeah, I lead these like 100-kilometer rides Saturday morning. I start at 5 and I'm finished by 9. I was like, what?
100 miles, 160
100 miles. Yeah, 100 miles in 4 hours.
Yeah.
I was like,
ZWIFT.
Just a second here. I don't think I've ever cycled that fast. And she's like, but the drafting, I'm like, that better be some damn good drafting happening. Because if I could go that fast, like 180 kilometers, I'd be like, not sitting here right now. No. So I guess you're gearing up. Like I did see that you were doing some events over the summer. I think you did a couple events. Like, do those go year round, or do you take a break, or do you just do a couple in the summer?
Yeah, I take a break. I really, this summer I might have done 1 or 2, and just because maybe it was crappy weather or something outside, I don't know. But I really took a major break this year, starting in April. Really, to be honest, I took a break a bit early, and it was like, because last year, because of COVID, there weren't a lot of races in real life, and so I basically raced all through the summer on ZWIFT, and I raced it just, my race season never stopped, and I got a bit burnt out, to be honest with you. So it was really awesome to take the summer off of racing and like on ZWIFT and do other types of racing, like the road racing. And actually this fall I'm going to try cyclocross for the first time. I have no idea how to get back on my bike. Don't talk about, let's not talk about.
Right.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious. I don't know how to remount. Like I can get back on my bike, but I don't do the flying leapy thing that all the
well, yes. yeah, that's something, that's probably the only thing you need to practice, and like how to pick up your bike and leap
Yeah.
over those
Yeah.
barricades, right?
Yeah.
And remount your bike. You like, yeah.
Yeah. But
Don't be surprised if you like knock yourself out because you hit your crotch so hard. Like,
I hope not. I hope not. Oh goodness. But yeah, I'm starting to get back into Zwift more because like even today it was like raining outside, so I don't want to, it's pouring out, so I'll choose to ride inside versus outside depending on the ride that I have to do. But yeah, I like taking the summer off has been awesome. So I'm actually excited to get back in race on Zwift now. And I will tell you that in April, I was just like, I don't want to see this thing.
oh yeah, I can, because you were racing every weekend, weren't you?
Every week.
Every week.
Yeah. And maybe sometimes more than once a week, right? Like I do the Premier race and then I might do another race. And so it can be a lot.
I like that, just makes me tired listening to that. But because I was just watching some of the ladies in our club who like, we all kind of like, there's a bunch of us who got really into it, but I just saw them like doing all this like grand fondos and like badges, like even on some of the Facebook pages, I'm like, wow, that's so much, that it's just a lot, not enough recovery time. Like it's just go go go, and then you just kind of watch ladies talk about being tired and burnt out, and like I'm like,
Yeah.
you have to have sort of like a plan.
Yeah.
And
yeah, and it can
so
get, it can get to be a bit consuming if you let it. So I think knowing what you want to do and what you want to get out of
yeah,
it is really important. Yeah.
because it can be like, it's even a more consuming race calendar than like say a summer race calendar.
Well, you could race every day of the week. You could race
I
multiple times
know.
a day, right? Like
Yeah, I know. That's what I
all the
mean.
time.
Like, if you don't control yourself, you're
Yeah.
like, you could
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
So, are you, would you say that a lot of the ladies that you race with, like, that is their thing? Like, they race online and they don't necessarily ride bikes
No,
outside?
there's some most of the women ride outside.
Mm.
Not all of them race outside, but a lot of them do. Like a fair number, like Lauren Stevens is one that she's like one of
Okay.
the say kind of cycling gals, and she does both Zwift, but she obviously races road racing. And there's lots of women that do like triathletes and stuff like that too that I know from in real life that
Yeah.
do well in real life, and they're also racing inside. So you have most people like at least half of the people that do. There's very, very rare that you have somebody who only does Zwift. There's only one or two women that I know that race in the Premier League that don't really race or ride outside that much.
Wow.
And most other women do.
Are
There's
they in like a location or environment that isn't
no,
conducive to cycling? Because sometimes there are some, like, sometimes they get on Swift. Like I've just like, because they're in a place that is not cycling friendly, or they're just maybe so remote that
no,
not
I
remote,
think they
but
just found out about Zwift as their first introduction to cycling, kind of like
right.
that was their introduction, and then they're really good at it and they're like, oh, this is cool. And I know one of the gals, like she's learning to ride outside now. Like this summer she rode outside a few times, and that's really cool. But it's that's more rare. It's more common that you at least ride outside, but not everybody who races in the Premier League races outside.
Right.
A fair number do, but not everyone. But there are some teams like 2024 has a road team in real life, obviously, and they have a Zwift team.
Okay.
And some of the gals that are in real life are also doing Zwift, but not all of them. And all of the ones that are doing Zwift are doing the in real life team. But they have some in both. In fact, this gal who's learning to ride is on that team. She doesn't ride outside yet, but she's on the 2024 Zwift team, but she's not on their in real life team because she like she's learning how to ride a bike outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Learning how to ride a bike and then learning how to race your bike is very
Yeah.
different. And I'm sure you'll find that like
Yeah.
doing close quarter crits
Yeah.
and things like that, that requires a lot of strategy and a lot of like I don't want to say guts, but in order to stay at the top,
Yeah.
it's not like, I know that there's strategy in Zwift and you're
No,
explaining
it's
that to me.
different. It's very different. I will
Oh
tell you
yeah.
that my road racing experience, because it was my first time road racing, was this summer.
Hmm.
And like mountain biking is the same at the start. Everyone's all jammed in and it's a cluster, but then it spreads out pretty quickly. Like in the first 10 minutes, you're out of the cluster and everyone's out of each other's handlebars. With road, you're always in each other's handlebars. The whole race, basically. Yeah. So but it taught me a lot more about drafting,
Mm,
and how to be a lot smarter because, and with mountain biking, you're doing your best the whole time. You're just full metal to the pedal the whole freaking race, as hard as you can go. And with road, it's like, well, actually, be as lazy as you can until it counts. Right? Like,
and while staying up front.
yeah, and you do the same. You try to do the same in Zwift, but I think that my drafting in Zwift is actually better now because I spent so much time this summer learning to draft, to be better at drafting on the road, like in the road
Right.
races off the guys and
Right.
off the gals. And so it's because you get the real life feel for it, and then when you get in game, you're like, okay, now I know, like adjust now. And because the game does simulate outdoors a lot. So I think riding the road races this summer, I think, at least I feel like it's going to make me a better Zwifter, which is interesting.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. I guess you don't have to worry about cross wheeling in Zwift,
No,
or can?
you kind of run people over sometimes. It's weird.
Oh yeah. So now you're getting geared up to start your season in Zwift.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you're going to balance it off with cyclocross
Yeah.
because that's till November, I guess, depending on where you are. Um, Now, and you're moving up to a higher league.
Well, I will race again in the Premier League. Yeah.
You'll race again in the Premier
Yeah.
League.
Yeah.
Okay. So now for anyone who's getting into this racing, okay, I'm going to talk about myself. What are the steps? And we did talk about, like you mentioned, you do have to have sorry, if you're going into the Tuesday local races, and you'd like to ideally, I guess, get started, in the lower category, which is maybe
Yeah.
4. You need a heart rate monitor, at least power pedals.
Yeah.
Is there
And
anything else that is
I don't know if you need to have a Zwift Power account, but it's good to have one. Like I would just set one up because
just to
then,
start with you
yeah.
collect your data?
But I think the biggest thing I would say is do join a team
Okay.
because
Okay. So then how do you join a team?
yeah. So talk to people that you know and trust to see what is good. And so like my team that I'm on right now is awesome and they're really good people and they have a really deep team. Like I said, it goes, all levels are there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's AEO, that it's Aeonian. That's AEO is short for the team name that I'm on. But it's a really great group of girls. And the benefit of joining a good team and being part of a good community is you will learn so much. Like that's where you learn everything. Like I would not know half of the stuff that I know today if it wasn't for the girls on the team that I'm on. Like they are smart, they're amazing. There's one girl on my team, she's just a brilliant Zwift tactician. Like she's outstanding. I learn from her every single race. But even just knowing the basics of like, where do I go to do this? Or like, what are the best races to go do? Like having that community of people that you trust to pull from, which is not the Zwift world, but like a subset of, it's really, really, I think, helpful. And then having that community which celebrates you and celebrates your accomplishments and picks you up when you're not feeling great, and it's just part of your family. I think that's a really important part of racing too, from my perspective, is just having that family who's behind you, who's with you no matter what. And like for me, like all the other stuff is kind of tactical, but I think being on a team where you feel good, where you feel like it's a good match for you and it's very personal, is really important.
I like that, because I remember the first time we chatted, you showing me like, this is a good series, this is not a good series, this is, and I was like, really? And like, how to
remember that? Like, you can't remember that, but I just know because I know the competition, because I've done certain races, right? But like expecting you to know that as somebody new in, how would you know, right? Like,
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But I am super excited because like last year I just found out all about that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is something that I would really like to engage myself in. And so now I know I'm going to be talking to you now, because I want you to hook me up. And I know, honestly, Monilee, I want to be just like you in Zwift world. No, but I'm like, and I know how I am racing. I'm just wondering how it'll translate into online. Like, I'm just really curious.
I love that outlook. I think it's the best. I'm kind of this, if you're curious, I think it's like the best way to go into it. Like, I'm super curious because every year you have there's going to be new people coming in, and I had a bunch of different race experiences this summer, and I'm curious, like, what is that going to translate? What's going to translate? What's not? How my fitness is different. The shape of my fitness is different now than it was. Like, what does that mean? I'm very curious. And I think when you go into it with that curious mindset, that's the best, because it's all about learning, and nothing is wrong or right. It's just learning. Like, it's like, okay, well, that didn't work out so well. I guess I'll learn.
No, exactly. I had lots of those moments.
Try something different. But being curious, I think, helps keep the mind open for that. So I think that's really good.
It's just like, because I just feel, because it's funny, because like if I look at my last 10 years, which was like marriage, 2 kids, the studio, not the studio, figure competing, racing, not racing. And then I'm like, and I look at, like, I just turned 50. So that's my next 10 years. I'm like, what is this going to look like? Because I want to get back into some sort of competitive state. And I'm like, I've done the road racing, and I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to go back to that. Not because I'm just like, I want a different kind of pain. Like, road racing is painful if you're not trained and ready. And the category system here really sucks. I'm sorry to say. I wish it was cats like everywhere else in the world. But it's not. It's we got 2 female categories, and that's it. And I'm like, I hate that. And then I tried that gravel race, and I loved mountain biking because I love fast downhills. I love tactical stuff. And coupled with the road, I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, where can I find more of this stuff? I've only done one, right? And I came 7th out of like 30. And I was like, kind of like that. And so so I'm gonna be looking for more stuff like that next year. And so, but
use it as an excuse to come here, and then we'll do a gravel race together.
Well, there was this, okay, so I just saw in Idaho, I think it was Idaho, there was this 3-day stage gravel race. It just finished. I can't remember. It's Rush something. It's
Rebecca's.
You're Rebecca, right? No,
Yeah,
is it Rebecca? Rebecca's not.
yeah, I forget the name. Rebecca's Private Idaho. Yeah, I totally
Yes.
do that sometime.
So that would be a good in between for
Totally,
both of us. And
totally.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah, yeah, I want to
yeah.
try. Yeah.
That's like the craziness. And I've heard of some other tougher races that are around here. I'm just,
Yeah.
And challenging. I'm like, so that's where I'm at. And I think I like the way I trained last year. Like I did 4 to 6 hours a week. That's basically all I could pull out mindset wise, like on the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I had specific trainings. I do want to incorporate the racing twice a month because, just for that extra tough push, like extra tough push.
Yep.
And then see where my fitness is at, because honestly, as I'm 50, like I said, I need more rest time. Like, how old are you?
44.
Okay. So wait, in the next couple of years, you'll start like, you'll look at your skin, Monilee, and you'll go like, what is going on? So, and I just have to be smart.
No,
like, I don't want to.
Like I noticed a difference when between my 20s and 30s, I noticed a difference. 30s and 40s, I noticed, well, pre and post kids, I noticed a difference. I definitely expect I'll notice more differences as time goes on, but I think knowing your limits and knowing about yourself, right? Like that's super important.
Yeah.
Because then you can train your body versus against your body, which is key.
Yeah. Because one of my friends, Patty Kunitz, she's like heavy into like mountain biking, and she's 65. And I'm like, I want to be like her, like just kicking it on World Cup races, mountain biking and cyclocrossing. I'm like, so that's why it's just being smart. Like, I'm not in it to wreck myself. Like, you gotta be smart, because I want myself to like survive till like I retire when I'm 60, so I can, lay on a beach for 10 years.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Oh my gosh, Miley. So I don't know how to end this. Like, I could keep talking about this, but I'm sure our listeners are kind of like, okay.
We're done now.
But so I guess that's it. We have, the racing. Find yourself somebody that you trust, who does a lot of Swifting and can navigate you into the online race world, I'm assuming.
Yep. And there's a lot of great opportunities out there, and happy to answer any questions. If you get any offline, you can shoot them to me. I'm happy to answer offline too.
Well, I'll be connecting with you personally, but for everybody else,
yeah.
I will put her Facebook and her Instagram links here. Don't forget to follow her and follow myself. And I just want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. I hope you took some good takeaways, because like I don't know if you're as excited as we are about racing, but it's so cool to sit with another woman and just like, just talk fun stuff, not like, our power to watt ratios and stuff. So don't forget to go, if you're online, subscribe to the podcast, and just share this with somebody who maybe is getting into Zwift or has been around. Anyways, I'm just glad I got you on here, because I'm just like dying inside to talk about this, because I need you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Monilee. I'm like over the moon excited about this. And anyways, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.